Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our folks around the world today, an international competition. Thanks for joining us for the 3K championships from the OCR World Championships hosted at Stratton in Vermont. I'm David Magida, along with Nicole Mericle, the champ herself. And Nicole, say hi to the people. It's nice to have you out here with us today.
How's it going?
We are very excited about this competition that we have today. I find the 3K to be one of the most exciting events of the year because it's fast and really one mistake can make or break this race. But while we have the opportunity right now before the men get started, I'd love to pick your brain about this course, about what they're about to go through as athletes, as competitors. And I know obviously that there is that one huge steep climb, but let's break down what this race is going to look like today.
Yeah. First of all, I think the 3K is one of the most exciting races in OCR. It's fast. It's always very tight. We see lots of lead changes. So I think it's going to be a super exciting race. One thing that stands out to me immediately is that we have some very rig intensive obstacles very early on. And I think it's possible, especially in the men's race, that we could have a little bit of congestion there.
Absolutely. And I was looking at the course thinking the exact same thing, and that you might see, amongst other things, a few mistakes early on because everyone is running so fast and so flustered and so close together. Something that I noticed immediately, in addition to all of that climbing that you have on that big, large opening climb, you have some rolling hills before and a little bit of rolling after. Um, I think what you'll see is a lot of athletes trying to assert themselves on that big climb today. But the descent is where this race is probably going to be won or lost, in my opinion, outside of the obstacles themselves. And then, of course, that heavy carry that kind of shows up right before the finish line could open the door for somebody.
Yeah, I think it's stacked kind of in the middle of some more upper body intensive obstacles. So we could see people struggle or even fail things that maybe otherwise wouldn't. But when you have a heavy carry so condensed around other rig like obstacles, then you can be much more taxed than you think you are.
So a lot of our viewers at home maybe have not raced an obstacle racing world championship event before. So explain to them exactly how this race differs from, say, their local Tough Mudder or Spartan race or something else that they might be going through.
So OCRWC is a little unique in the obstacle structure because they allow failures they allow you to retry obstacles as many times as you want to, but you have to pass. You have to actually complete the obstacle in order to proceed and stay in the competition. So we call that a mandatory obstacle completion race, and it's something that is, I think, for a racer, it's pretty exciting because it allows you to take a little bit more risk when you're approaching an obstacle. You can really dive into it. And if you have a silly mistake, you can jump right back on. You don't have to worry that a small, simple mistake is going to cost you 2 minutes of burpees. So I think in some
And we
ways it makes
see
things
we
more exciting.
And we see this with some events out there. The reason that you don't see a large event, say like a Spartan race, do it is they're concerned about congestion out on the course. But with such a limited number of racers, we actually have the opportunity to push mandatory obstacle completion, which is very exciting for the race. And it does mean that you have to be an excellent obstacle proficient racer in order to really make your mark and stand atop a podium on a course like this. Now, the obstacles are also maybe different. Some of the European athletes may not be as familiar with some of the American obstacles. Some of the American athletes may not be as familiar with some of the international obstacles. And when you look at this map breakdown, what do you see that really stands out to you as something that might actually change the race in terms of obstacles on this course?
So there's a lot of obstacles here that no one has seen before. We have Stairway 3.0, which is an ascending rig-like structure. And typically, these are fixed holds that don't move. But today, we see each implement rotates and is not, they're all different structures. So we have like a downward sloping hold, we have um, square bars, there's a wheel involved, there's all these different elements. And so that's going to be something that no racer has seen that before, not that exact structure. Then we also have the drop zone, which is, I don't know if it's on the camera right now or not. It is. Okay, cool. So that's what we're looking at right now. We're looking at the age groupers go through. And this is an obstacle, again, no one has seen before, completely new. You can see that there's an ascending ladder, and then you have to reach down or jump down to the next bar. And you'll see people lache here. You'll see people who have the span to reach across. And then you'll see probably a lot of falls.
Do you
What
think
do you think
anyone
about
will
this one,
attempt to?
David?
I'm fascinated looking at this. It's definitely something I haven't done before. But do you think that people may try to skip that lowest rung, or is that not even possible?
I think that you'll see people go from the lowest rung of one to the lowest rung of another. Um, that will require a full on lache for most people. Other people will
Hmm.
go to the second one and be able to reach across, and some people will have to go to the top one, but then you're taking a bigger fall. And that's really taxing on your grip because your hands have to rotate. It's pretty taxing on your shoulders because you have to absorb that fall. So I do think that this is something that we're going to see a lot of failures, and if nothing else, it is going to take a little bit longer to get through it for some people who maybe don't have the same, like, the best body awareness, or they can't do these very dynamic movements naturally.
And if you're watching on the screen for your folks at home, one thing to notice is look what everyone's wearing. They're dressed a little warmer. It's a little chilly outside, and this may not have as big an impact on the race today because we're starting in the middle of the day. But if you look towards tomorrow in the 15K, towards the 100-meter championships later in the weekend, dexterity can be an issue if it were to get a little wet to combine with those chilly temperatures. And of course, when you're talking about so much dexterity required to complete some of these obstacles, it could actually be a big factor. Now, we haven't lined up at the start yet. I have not seen the men line up. And so I'd like to take the opportunity right now. There is a slight delay, it looks like, in the start of the men's race. We're looking at about 1:15 now for your start. Um, so we have a little bit of time, a lot of time now, it seems like. So, Nicole, if you a lot of time, more than we were expecting right now. But Nicole, let's take an opportunity right now to talk about how this race shook out for the last couple of years and the returning characters that we think are going to be major players, as well as maybe looking towards some new faces. So I'd love to start with the men a little bit, talk about who has had success here in the past, and we can pull up some of those statistics as well. And we know, obviously, that VJ Jones won this race last year, and he was really kind of unbeatable for a solid span of time on the short course distances. And then we had Ryan Kempson in second and Igor Belisov finishing in third. And I don't believe Belisov is racing. So looking at the 3K today, do you believe that this is a VJ Jones race to lose, or do you expect that there will be some contenders?
I do think this is a deeper field. We have Ryan Atkins in the race, who was at the Spartan North American Championships last year. So he is obviously always a contender in any race he enters. And then we also have some new faces. So we have Rylan, and he is someone who has shown to be a very instant dominant force in Spartan races, but he has yet to do any other type of obstacle course race. So it'll be interesting to see how he does on these new and more challenging obstacles. We have seen him fail things in Spartan races before. So I believe both in the Utah and in the Kelowna races, he failed the rig, which doesn't necessarily mean that he won't succeed and do well in this race, but he's someone who might take a couple tries on things just because he hasn't seen these obstacles.
Absolutely. And
And
you know,
then
again, we are talking about a guy who's just got a phenomenal engine, the ability to just keep chugging along. But uh, this is going to be his biggest obstacle test by by a mile.
One other person who was just out of the podium last year was Sean Roberts, and he was a newcomer.
Mm.
So this year he has a little bit more experience under his belt. He also has an incredible running pedigree from college as a miler, and I think he's only gotten better and faster. So I think he'll be somebody up in the mix. And I'm just going through the 3K list right now to make sure I don't miss anybody. Oh yes, the
What
other
about
person that comes
Jesse
to mind
Daher?
is yes, Jesse Day here. He is the European OCR champion, and so that is someone who also is going to come in and make some noise as well.
Yeah, and Jesse's a person that I think many are not familiar with. And to win an OCR championship in Europe, it requires the ability to complete complex obstacles as well. Like I think many of them would consider the obstacles that we typically face on a regular race here in the States to be a little simpler by comparison. So I don't think that many of the European racers and international racers will be as affected by the obstacles as some of our stronger American racers. Of course, we'll have the folks who have no trouble at all. The BJ Joneses, Ryan Kempson has proven that he can compete with the best on a course like this. And I think we all know what Ryan Atkins brings to the table. But at the same time, there is that opportunity for those relative unknowns to break through. And if you look at a Sean Roberts, he's not an unknown at all. We've seen how he's beaten some of the best in the sport in other race series. Take Savage Race, for example. But he definitely is um, he definitely has very high highs and very low lows. And if he could put together one of those very high days, he could be on the podium. Absolutely.
Totally. One other name who is in here that we've seen podium at um, the North American Championships here in Stratton is Jesse Bruce. He's been on the 3K podium
Yes.
there, so I think that is another competitor who could do really well. Um, and one of the interesting things is that there's so many athletes here that I don't even know if it's necessarily we're going to see the podium come from the first heat. There's always the chance that you could have somebody from a second or third heat sneak up into that podium. It's unlikely, but it's possible.
So walk the viewers through this. For those who don't know, we are running heats today for the 3K, and that heats are going to consist of how many racers today, Nicole?
It's usually about 8 to 10 athletes in a heat, and we have about 60, 70 competitors today. So we'll see, yeah, 5 to 6 heats, I bet.
Mm-hmm.
So they run them very close together, but because there are about 6 lanes for each obstacle, I think that's accurate, maybe more for some. They don't want to start too many athletes at once, especially because again we have pendulum, we have stairway, very very close into the start of the race. So you don't want to get a bottleneck there. You want everybody to have as open of a course as possible.
And so, what this means for the viewers is that we, Nicole and I, may not know who is in the lead and who has won this race when athletes start crossing the finish line. But it also means that those athletes don't know, which adds a really nice wrinkle to this because if you're out in front with a sizable lead, you can't stop hammering. You need to keep drilling that race. And if you're running in that second or third place position, every second counts so that you don't get overtaken by an athlete from the next heat behind you.
Totally.
So when you
And
were
again, we've
racing
typically
this
seen,
race,
yeah, what's that?
well, I was going to say when you were
Sorry, go
racing
on.
this race and you've won this race, uh, were you worried at all that an athlete in that heat behind you was going to track you down? Did that help keep your feet to the fire?
You know, whenever I was on the starting line for the 3K, I tried to do my best to make sure that the best athletes were in my wave. So there were years that we had someone like Becca Hammond come in, and the race directors didn't necessarily know who she was. And so, or who else would it be? Yeah, there were just different athletes over the years, and I would always try to advocate for them to be on the start line in the first heat if I thought that that was because that's my competition, and so I want them to be up there with me as well. So it's
Of
advantageous
course.
for the competitors, and it's advantageous for like who you want to race against.
There certainly
But
is
I
the
would say
advantage
that
of having a cluster whipping up the pace and really bringing the best out of each other.
totally.
So while we're on this topic, because we're talking about your days of competition here in this sport, I'd love to hear from you your thoughts on the women's field as well. I mean, obviously we have Lindsay Webster, and everybody, I don't care where in the world you are, if you're a fan of this sport, you're very aware of exactly what she brings to the table. And so we can dive into talking about Lindsay, all day about how talented she is.
Was it not streaming at all ever? Oh, but it was streaming for a while though. Oh, okay. Yeah. Pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. Really good.